Welcome to Motivational Life Hacks with Van Leer.
Welcome to the Motivational Life Hacks by Van Leer podcast. I am your host, Van Leer, and it is my goal to provide you with the recipe for greatness on these Motivational Mondays. So without further ado, let's cook. In today's message, I want to get into a topic very personal to me. As a matter of fact, I'm mentally feeling this topic as we speak. But before we jump into that, I want to talk about a resource I'm going to provide for you all. 50 Motivational Life Hacks to Become a Better You by Van Leer is my book that I wrote to give you that daily motivational dose that you need to get through your day. I've got some feedback from individuals who purchased this book, things I've heard. They say to me, Van, listen, before I go into work and I'm in that parking lot and before I get out of my car to walk inside to begin my day, I take about 2.5, 3 minutes to read a particular chapter. And guess what? It gives me that fuel to take on the world. I've talked to students who told me on days when they have to take a test or an assessment, before they walk in that door, they find a quiet space somewhere in that school, sit down again for a couple of minutes, read one of those 50 chapters, and guess what? They go in and conquer that test. Again, this tool and this book that I like to call it is available for you all. You can pick it up on Amazon via hard copy, paperback, and for those of you all who like to download books to the Kindle, it is also available on Kindle. I also have something very special for you. Starting today, you can actually pick up my book via Audible. So for those of you all who like to listen to your books, maybe on the way to work, on the way to school, maybe you're in the gym working out, like I do all the time, go ahead and add this to your Audible collection and then get that motivation you need, again, to take on the day. Now, to today's topic. So I want to illustrate something and talk about something personal that I've been going through. So a few weeks ago, I received a phone call from my mom. And unfortunately, it was not a phone call that I really wanted to hear. She told me that unfortunately, my uncle was suffering from cancer. And obviously, when you hear something like that, you're like, wow, like, oh my goodness, what is going on? And you stop everything. You literally feel like you're suspended in air. And so, I was kind of prepping myself because my uncle, he was older in age. He was in his 90s, so he lived a full life. I live here in Atlanta. He lived in California, so he was on the other side of the United States. And again, with my mom calling me, it just kind of rocked my world to understand that, hey, my uncle is older, and unfortunately, he has this terminal disease. So, you know how things are. You just go on with normal life and going to work and doing the norms, checking in on your loved ones. But then ultimately, the unfortunate really, really happened. I got that phone call from my mom to say my uncle had passed away. Immediately, I felt this dark cloud come down on my mental. Because obviously, anytime you lose someone close to you, it is going to mentally affect you. And it affects us in different ways. Today's topic that I want to address is about the 7 stages of grief. Now, when my mom called me, I could tell that she was in one of these stages of grief that I'm going to review with you all today. And I said, Mom, you know what? I'm on the way. And my mom said, no, son, it's okay. I will be all right. And I can hear her crying over the phone. And so as a son, obviously, I'm like, no, I can't let my mom suffer. If she's going to be going through these emotions, I need to get to her. So I said, Mom, no way I'm going to let you go through this alone. I'm on the way. I hung up the phone and I traveled to my mom's home. When I got there, ladies and gentlemen, my mom was in the bed. Normally, she's not like that. I have a very vibrant mom. likes to go out with her friends, travel, things of that nature, life of the party type of mom. So just to walk in to her bedroom and see her up under the covers did something to me. And I realized she was experiencing grief, just like I was experiencing grief. Well, she ultimately got up. We finally sat down in the living room and we began to talk. And we basically began to reminisce about my uncle, talk about some of those great times from the past when was a child and I would go out and visit him during those summers. And we were just kind of laughing about some of those great times. But I could still see that my mom was extremely affected by what happened with my uncle, just as I was affected by what happened with my uncle. So in thought, I said, you know what? Let me make sure I call out to California to my cousin, my uncle's firstborn son, and check in with him because I know how close they are. So I called him, and his name is Michael. So I said, hey, Michael, what's going on? How are you? You want to know what the first thing Michael said to me was? Ladies and gentlemen, he said to me, Van, I lost my hero. Van, I lost my hero. When I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that just tore through my spirit because I could hear the pain and the agony in his voice. And with me being on the other side of the United States and not physically being able to hug him and hold him and tell him everything is going to be okay and be there physically for that support process really, really affected me, just like it was affecting him, just like it was affecting my mom, obviously, just like it's going to affect all of my family members. We are all going through grief. And guess what? If you live long enough on this earth, you're going to experience this also. So, what I want to do today is actually take you through what are the 7 stages of grief, because I want you, when this happens to you, to be able to recognize what's going on, but more importantly, allow your emotions to go through it. That's right. You heard me. You don't want to deny yourself going through the stages of grief because you become a better person on the other side of it. Okay. Some of us never get over our grief, to be quite honest with you, because we won't allow ourselves to go through these actual stages of grief. So I want to make sure you all understand what these stages are and are able to recognize them so that when they happen to you, you will be okay. So first, let me break down the 7 stages, and then we'll go back and then give a description individually of how this is going to affect you. Stage number 1, shock and denial. Stage number 2, pain and guilt. Number 3, anger and bargaining. 4th, depression, reflection, loneliness. Number 5, the upward turn. 6, reconstruction and working through. And finally, acceptance and hope. Let's talk about shock and denial. When I got the call from my mom about my uncle passing, I was not in shock, to be quite honest with you, because again, a few weeks before that, I found out that he had cancer. So you're kind of bracing yourself. But there was a time in my life where I lost someone close to me, my grandfather, who's actually technically my uncle's brother. I lost my grandfather in my early teens. I never forget my mom getting that phone call saying that my grandfather had passed away and just hearing the pain and the anguish in her voice, and then her finally walking into my room, telling me what's going on, and I was in complete shock. I couldn't believe it. Basically, I was in disbelief that my grandfather was now gone. That happens when you lose someone close to you. Also, what happens? You want to deny reality. It's almost like, no, I don't believe it. No, there's no way that my uncle's gone, that my grandfather's gone. As a matter of fact, ladies and gentlemen, a couple of years ago, I lost my dad. I denied that reality. I remember when my dad was sick and I would go down and visit him in the hospital, and eventually he passed away. And even though I went to see him in the hospital many times before he passed, when he passed, I was still denying it. If you all were to see my father, we look identical. He would just be an older version of me. As a matter of fact, I'm his namesake, Van Leer. I'm a junior, he's the senior. So there will be times where you just even deny that that person is gone. And obviously, with that shocking denial, you're going to feel overwhelmed. Those emotions and feelings are going to be all encompassing. Sometimes it's going to be hard to move. Sometimes it's going to be hard to think. Sometimes it's going to be hard to breathe. And it's okay because you're on that first stage of grief, shock, and denial. And again, you have many stages to go, but you need to recognize what's happening to you when it happens. Stage number 2, pain and guilt. Obviously, when you care for someone and you love someone deeply, they're in your inner circle, whether it's a friend, family member, co-worker. When they're gone, you're going to feel it. And you're going to feel it in a dramatic way. A lot of times we're going to suffer over losing that individual. Every time I lose someone close to me, I suffer. Does that mean that I don't go to work? Does that mean that I don't go to the gym? There are times where I don't. But when I do go and I still try to get through life, I am suffering initially. That pain is real. Recognize that. When you lose someone, that pain is going to be real. Allow your emotions to flow. Understand that that is going to mentally affect you, but ultimately, you're going to get through it and get on the other side of it. Allow yourself to experience it. Also, there are going to be times where you have remorse when it comes to that pain and that guilt. I can personally speak on this. All the times that I went to visit my dad in that hospital, when he eventually passed away, I remember feeling this saying, you know what, Van, you could have went and spent more time with your dad in the hospital. That was remorse based on what I'm feeling like I should have done. That's going to happen. You're going to think about all those times that you spent with that loved one or that friend or that family member. And then you're going to think, man, I just wish I would have spent more time with him. Life is short. And I just feel like I could have done more. So recognize that emotion and allow yourself to flow through it. This process you're feeling and that you're going through is going to be scary. Every time I lose someone, I'll be quite transparent and honest with you. I'm always afraid to go to the funeral. I'm always afraid that I'm going to have to walk in and look at and view and feel what I'm going to have to go through. Team, it's a part of life. Ultimately, it is going to happen. So again, we have to allow ourselves grace in these stages, and pain and guilt is going to happen. Number 3, anger and bargaining. That frustration level because that person is gone can also be overwhelming. It may cause you to lash out. It may cause you to say things or behave in certain ways that you never thought that you would be doing. Some of us turn to drugs. Some of us turn to alcohol to try to dull that actual anger and that pain that we're feeling. Sometimes we even say, why me? Those of you all who believe in God like myself, you're going to question, God, why did you allow this to happen? Again, this is all part of the grieving process. You have to be able to recognize what's going on with you and let those emotions flow. Now, I am not telling you to take out your emotions on anyone else. That's not what I'm saying at all. If you need to take that time and step away, be alone for a while to gather your thoughts, and then come back to express yourself in a healthy way, that's the best way to do it. But ultimately, please recognize you're going to be frustrated. You're going to be angry. There may be times that you lash out. There also may be times where you just question overall, why is this happening? And what you're really asking is, why is this happening to me? Number 4, depression, reflection, and loneliness. We already know in today's society, there's a lot of reasons why individuals are depressed. So when you lose someone, that could add on to that. Now, hopefully you're not in a depressed state as we speak. But when you lose someone, it may instantly trigger that depression, that sadness, that dark cloud you feel on every waking moment. You wake up with it, you go to bed with it. Understand that can also be a part of grief. Recognize it. Allow yourself to go through it. Allow yourself to go through those feelings. Thought. You're going to replay the times that you spent with that person over and over and over again. That is part of the reflection portion of grief. Because obviously they're no longer with us. So you're going to be thinking to yourselves, what are some of those great times that I spent? For example, I remember as a child going out to visit my uncle in California and us visiting amusement parks, Disneyland, and just having the time of my life, even as a small child. So guaranteed when I'm in California going forward, I'm going to always reflect on those great times that we had as a child when I would go out and visit. And even now, I think about some of those times. About a year or so ago, we had a family reunion here in Atlanta. And luckily, my uncle was able to attend, so I did get a chance to not only see him and talk to him, but spend some time with him. So I'm grateful for that. And I think about that all the time now, that, you know what, I'm so glad I got a chance to spend time with my uncle. That's going to happen to you. You're going to have those reflective moments. Also, a lot of times when we lose someone close to us, especially if this person, let's say, lived with us, and then all of a sudden they're no longer around, we're going to feel a certain sense of loneliness, which could also add to our depression state. Recognize that. Understand that 9 times out of 10, you have an inner circle, friends and additional family members around you. A lot of times they're experiencing the same emotion that you're experiencing. Nothing wrong with reaching out and spending time with those individuals to kind of curb and blunt that loneliness that you may be feeling in your times of grief. Recognize that, okay? It's not always healthy to try to go through things alone and by yourself. And again, this is going to affect your mental. So if it gets to the point where you truly need professional help, that's fine. Go ahead and seek that out. A mentor is great. A coach will be great for this. But ultimately, holding these emotions inside is going to further make that feeling of loneliness even greater. And again, that can be of detriment to you. So if you have those individuals around you that you can spend time with and talk to, please do. Please take advantage of it. Number 5, the upward turn. So now that we've gone through this shock and denial, pain and guilt, this anger, this depression, at some point, and again, I can't give you a time frame when this is going to come, you're going to experience, hopefully, this upward turn. What this ultimately means is you're going to feel a little calmer. When you wake up in the morning and that initial overwhelming anxiety feeling you feel because you're feeling that person's loss, it's not going to be as extreme. When you're going through the day and you're just kind of going through the emotions and the motions of what you got to do during the day, going to work, picking up the kids, so forth and so on, it's going to be a little easier. A lot of times when you lose someone, you're kind of chaotic. You're kind of disorganized. You'll find when you reach the upward turn stage that you begin to get things back to normal as far as being more organized, going back to your normal schedule, doing things that you normally do, having the normal thought process that you normally have. Again, this is a great sign that you're continuing to move through these stages of grief. And ultimately, like I always say, you're going to get on that other side and it's going to be much easier for you. Ultimately, though, you're going to feel lifted. While you will never forget that loved one that you lost, you're going to feel a little better. It's going to be a little easier. Your mind's going to be a little clearer. Now, step number 6, reconstruction and working through it. Now we finally get to the point where we really feel functional. We almost feel like we're back to normal, but we're not quite there yet. But we're looking better, we're feeling better, we're talking better, to the point where other individuals are recognizing and even saying, hey, Van, it looks like you're feeling better. Hey, Van, it looks like you're looking better. When you're at work and you're speaking with coworkers, they can begin to see that little glimmer in your eye that you used to have. When you're around friends and family, they begin to see that little pep in your step that you would normally have. So again, recognize that now you're on the upward turn, reconstruction, working through phase, and you're going to have those better days. Now, that's not to say that you're not going to have setbacks. On those anniversaries of that loved one passing, when that day comes that next year, you may regress. You may lay in that bed and not want to get up. You may not want to get out of the house. You may not want to open those curtains. And that's okay. While you may have gotten through the 7 stages of grief, that doesn't mean that your mind and your spirit and your soul is not going to return and remember what happened with that individual who you love. That could happen. Again, allow those emotions to flow and everything will be okay. Also, with the reconstruction and working through phase, those solutions. So now in your brain, where you were so cluttered and you feel like you cannot complete a task, now you can. Now you feel more back to normal, where the normal things that you're able to handle right away, you can do that going forward. And finally, I pray that all of you all get to this step, which is your final step of acceptance and hope. Simply, that is the ability for you to accept what happened and deal with it emotionally and physically. Again, you can get there, and you're going to get there if you allow your emotions to flow on these 7 stages of grief. At this stage, you also get to the point where you feel like you can move forward. Those things that you were kind of holding back on because you were so emotionally distraught as you were going through these 7 stages, now you can move forward towards that brighter day and those projects that you wanted to tackle or whatever it is. You also look forward to a brighter future. So now you recognize that a loved one is gone, but you also recognize that you're not gone. You're still living. You're on the earth. You have things to do. You have things you want to do. So that future that you see is super bright, and now you feel like you can walk forward. And ultimately, this leads to you living again. Not to say that you were technically not living, because you were, but now you just have that full, robust feeling of living again. When you walk outside and you breathe the air, it smells fresher. When you open that window and you feel that sunshine, it beams brighter. And when you think about that loved one that you lost, guess what? You smile and you laugh about all those memories that you had in the past. So these 7 stages of grief: shock and denial, pain and guilt, anger and bargaining, depression, reflection, loneliness, the upward turn, reconstruction and working through, and finally acceptance and hope, are just a part of life. And like I said at the very beginning, if you live long enough, you're going to experience these things. And all I want you to do is to be able to recognize it, allow your emotions to flow, and I guarantee you, you'll be better on the other side. In closing, again, I thank you all for joining me for what I like to call these Motivational Mondays. Please come back and join us every Monday so that I can give you that daily motivation that you need. Don't forget, please pick up this resource, 50 Motivational Life Hacks to Become a Better You. Again, I'm super excited that it is now available on Audible. I got a dynamic talent narrating the book. I really believe you all are going to enjoy this gentleman. His name is William Wells, that we partnered together to make sure that when he narrated, it was the most powerful thing that you could hear. My name is Van Leer. Thank you for joining Motivational Life Hacks by Van Leer. Please don't forget to reach out to me via my LinkedIn. I am available on all social media. Even if you can't join me on Motivational Mondays, on my YouTube and my LinkedIn, I have plenty of motivational videos that you can watch. I love you. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you sometime in the future. Have a great week, team. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching Motivational Life Hacks with Van Leer. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next week.